I never thought I'd find myself in a family feud over something that feels so trivial at first glance, but here we are. My sister, Laura, called me last week in a panic. She had just bought a new house, and her renovations were taking longer than expected. She was supposed to host her kids' school festival this weekend, but the space was chaos, walls torn down, dust everywhere, and a non-functioning kitchen. She asked if I could let her 2 kids, Josh and Ava, stay in my spare bedroom until the work was done. Instinctively, my heart sank. It's not that I don't love my niece and nephew, I do, but my home is my sanctuary, and I've carved out that spare room as a personal refuge from my crammed work schedule and the demands of city life. It's where I unwind after long days, my only corner of peace. I thought about how my walls are adorned with my quirky posters and string lights that give me comfort, and how I've arranged everything to suit my tastes. When I tried to explain this to Laura, she didn't take it well. "They're just kids," she snapped, her voice rising through the phone. "They can't just be packed into the living room. They need their space, and this is your chance to help out." I felt bad, really, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the bigger picture was being overlooked. I told her I needed to think about it, but I could sense the disappointment in her tone. The following days felt heavy, filled with guilt and an uneasy weight of familial obligation. I kept imagining Josh's disappointment and Ava's big brown eyes, but I also imagined losing my peace. I ended up texting Laura the next day, gently declining. It's not like I offered her any alternative. "I can help with the kids during the festival, maybe take them out for ice cream afterward," I added. Her response came quick, laced with irritation. "Whatever. I'm just a little surprised you'd choose a room over your family." I tucked my phone away, feeling small in that moment. I spent the better part of the rest of the week trying to let go of the hurt I felt. I was the bad guy in this situation, and the texts from family members didn't help. My mom chimed in, reminding me how hard Laura always worked and that I shouldn't make things more difficult for her. I found myself second-guessing my decision, wondering if I had been selfish. Yet, beneath all the turmoil, I clung to my choice. I had to protect my own mental health. The festival weekend rolled around, and I offered to help out, but I was still walking the line of tension with my sister. Watching Laura attempt to juggle her kids and her new home made me feel more sympathy for her than I ever expected. When I finally saw them that Saturday, a part of me wished I had offered the room, but another part of me found a kind of serenity in knowing where my limits lay. I was fulfilling my role as an aunt, just not in the way everyone expected. It feels like a tug-of-war sometimes, love versus boundary setting, but maybe there lies the beauty of it all. And honestly, I think we all need a little more of that in our lives, don't we? As for my niece and nephew, they seemed to find joy at the festival without a hitch. They were laughing, running around, and for a brief moment, I felt relieved. Perhaps it was just a lesson learned, a reminder that sometimes, love means understanding and supporting your family while still honoring your own needs. As for an update? Well, I think things are slowly mending. I called Laura last night, and we talked things over. It wasn't easy, but we finally came to an understanding. I admitted the anxiety made me hesitant, and she apologized for snapping. In the end, I think we both learned that love can be messy, but it doesn't have to mean sacrificing our own sanctuaries. It's about managing priorities, and while I cherish my sister and her kids, I also cherish my own space. After that phone call with Laura, I decided to take a walk around my neighborhood. The familiar crunch of leaves under my sneakers and the crisp autumn air felt comforting against the backdrop of the somewhat emotionally charged night we just had. I had always found solace in wandering the streets of my suburban enclave, the oversized trees lining either side standing like guardians to my thoughts. Each step helped me process everything that had happened, not just the recent flare-up but also the complex relationship I shared with my sister and her family. The friction between us had become palpable in recent months, like a fire that had been smoldering quietly until it flared up unexpectedly. Laura had always been the more spontaneous one, the sister who took risks. Meanwhile, I'd prided myself on being a creature of comfort, the one who thrived on routine. I imagined her one-room apartment stuffed with toys and papers strewn everywhere, a chaotic ecosystem ruled by her kids, and then there was my bedroom, my sanctuary uniquely reflecting my taste, my quiet. As I walked along the streets, I wondered if that's where our disconnect began. I adored my niece and nephew, they were vibrant little beings full of life, but the thought of giving up my space, my sacred bubble, felt as absurd as inviting a gust of wind into my carefully curated home. I repeated to myself that no, I didn't have to risk my comfort to be a good aunt. Yet guilt gnawed at me. Was I being selfish? I could almost hear the whispers of what people would say as I took my seat at the dinner table during family gatherings. There was that auteur aunt, too rigid to accommodate her own blood. So many thoughts swirled in my head until I finally stopped by my favorite cafe. The charming little place, with its uneven wooden tables and the smell of fresh pastries wafting through open windows, always made me feel at home. I ordered my regular cappuccino, its warmth pressing against my palms, even its foam felt like a hug. And just then, I glanced out the window and saw a mother with her 2 children, one tugging at her hand too. Hurried to the playground while the other balanced artfully on a scooter. They laughed and shouted, and before I could stop myself, I smiled, recalling moments I'd spent with my niece and nephew, their giggles ringing through the air like wind chimes. I often wished I could magically harness that laughter and ease, to bring it into my home without a loss of autonomy. My thoughts drifted to Laura's frantic phone call the day before, her shaky voice revealing her own fears of not being enough for her kids, trying to balance a demanding job with parenting. I realized then that our conflict was deeper than our simple disagreement about living arrangements. It was about her feeling stretched thin, and me standing firm as a solid rock, refusing to bend. Here I was, a bystander reflecting on how it felt to protect my boundaries, while she was in the middle of a tempest, grappling to keep everything together. With steam rising from my mug, I pulled out my phone and typed her a quick message. "Hey, just wanted to say again that I love you guys. We're going to figure this out, together? When you need help, with the kids or otherwise, count on me." It was simple, but I hoped it conveyed sincerity. I hit send and found myself optimistic about the possibilities, how love could exist within our shared imperfections. As the sky turned deeper blue with hints of twilight, a thought struck me. Perhaps I could offer my space for short stays and weekends, not for them to fully reside in, but a place for escapades when they needed a break. It could be a retreat, somewhere they could enjoy little adventures, while I didn't lose my haven completely. This idea fluttered around in my mind like a butterfly, transforming my initial sense of loss into a feeling of expansion. In the days that followed, I shared this idea with Laura, and to my surprise, she loved it. Our conversations gradually evolved into brainstorming family weekends, and with it, came brighter days. Sometimes there would be raucous bedtime stories filled with laughter and chaos, other times, quiet moments where we simply enjoyed each other's company. It wasn't just about sharing my space anymore, it was about sharing our lives, redefining what it meant to support each other while still establishing boundaries. So, here I am, sitting on my bed as I write this, refreshed by the recent turn of events. My initial discomfort feels increasingly like a distant memory, replaced by a new rhythm that still honors my sanctuary. I think about how love can be both firm and flexible, like a seasoned tree bending gently in the wind rather than breaking. Family isn't a matter of zero-sum, rather, it's a tapestry woven from acceptance, generosity, and, surprisingly, a little bit of space. At the end of the day, I realize that sometimes, boundaries can cradle you just as securely as the ones we tear down. As I sit here on my bed, I find myself glancing at the old photographs taped to my wall, snapshots of family gatherings, Christmas mornings, and birthdays filled with laughter. Each picture tells a story, encapsulating moments that felt so momentous then, yet now seem like echoes of a simpler time. The warm hues of those memories make me smile, but they're also a reminder of how complicated family can be, especially when everyone is trying to navigate their own needs alongside each other's. I think about the last few months and realize that, while the tension with Laura was harsh, it also served as a catalyst for something deeper. It was the anxiety of possibly losing the closeness we built over a lifetime that stirred my heart. Yet somehow, we managed to untangle the thread of that misunderstanding without letting it fray completely. Reflecting on that phone conversation, I remember how we both took turns listening, each word a fragile offering. I can still hear her soft voice, a blend of affection and remorse. "I never meant to make you feel pushed aside," she admitted, her kindness breaking through the facade of hurt we'd both been clinging to. It was in that moment I understood just how much love she had for my space, too, even if she hadn't articulated it clearly before. When I said, "I need my sanctuary, just as you need yours," it felt like the dam holding back our frustrations had finally cracked enough to let a little light seep in. The kids, they bring a certain chaos, a vibrant energy that fills the house even when they're not here. I cherish my time with them, and I can't deny the joy that comes when I see them growing, learning, exploring. But they also symbolize a shift, a change in the dynamic I had been reluctant to embrace until now. Every giggle, every excited shout from them feels like an invitation to stand closer to my sister, but but I still hold my boundaries tight like a protective shield. This past weekend, Laura and her kids came over for dinner, and I was surprised at how comfortable everything felt. Maverick, my nephew, who's 7 and possesses all the charm of an overzealous puppy, ran straight for my living room with a worn-out soccer ball. The moment I heard the thud of it against the wall, I felt my stomach drop slightly. Yet, when I walked into the room, seeing him so caught up in his own world, his laughter contagious, something shifted inside me. I didn't need my sanctuary to be unwavering. I could appreciate the beautiful mess life brings while still reserving a corner of my heart and home just for me. By the end of the evening, as I washed the dishes and Laura dried, we couldn't help but swap stories and reminisce. It felt like an old rhythm resurfacing, something we'd both thought we'd lost. The tension started to dissolve in the steam rising from the sink as we joked about our childhood antics, the mischief we'd gotten into, and how our parents had their own challenges. Each laugh pulled us closer, stitching together the tears that had formed in our sisterhood. After everyone went home, I found myself reflecting on the importance of that evening. I felt relief and warmth, not just because we were back on good terms but because I was learning how to flex without breaking. I don't think family means merging into one entity, it's more of a dance of individuality, weaving in and out, maintaining a rhythm that suits everyone involved. Now, weeks later, I've started a little tradition of my own. Every Sunday morning, I make pancakes and invite Laura and the kids, and it's become a lovely ritual that fills my home with the sweet scent of maple syrup and laughter. I hold my boundaries steady, but I also choose to be present, blending my world in theirs without losing myself in the process. As the sun sets this evening, filtering through my bedroom window, casting golden rays across my desk, I feel more serene than ever. Life will continue to offer new challenges, and there may be disagreements and misunderstandings down the road. But I now sit in my sanctuary, firmly rooted while allowing branches of love to extend beyond its walls. And there's a quiet comfort that resides in knowing that both space and connection can simply coexist, harmonizing in a world that often feels at odds. You're never quite prepared for the moment when a friendship you thought was solid begins to crack, like the sudden appearance of a hairline fracture in a beloved piece of pottery. I always thought my best friend, Jessica, and I were inseparable. We met in college, bonding over late-night study sessions and shared cravings for pizza, and over the years, our friendship deepened through heartbreaks and triumphant job hunts. So, when she announced her engagement, I was ecstatic. The proposal story was adorable and included a classic movie moment. He got down on one knee at their favorite park, a sunset painting the sky behind them. But there was a twist, one I didn't see coming. She made a whole bridal party, picking 3 other friends as bridesmaids while leaving me out. My heart sank not just because I was omitted, but because there was no explanation, no discussion. It felt like a silent verdict on our friendship, sudden and devastating. In those first few weeks after her announcement, I threw myself into my job, burying myself in reports and deadlines, but still, her wedding was all anyone could talk about. Soon, it felt like the walls were closing in, everyone's excitement amplifying my hurt. When the invitations were sent out, and I received mine, just as a regular guest, it all hit me again. "Are you going to help me?" she asked one evening, her voice hopeful and bright. She needed help with planning, with organizing details, and with the emotional upheaval that comes with wedding preparations. A million thoughts surged through me, but all I managed was a restrained nod, feigning enthusiasm. Inside, though, a storm raged. I was angry at Jessica for not including me, but even more at myself for being so sensitive. She was still my best friend, right? I wrestled with the decision, tossing and turning at night, replaying our memories, trying to convince myself the exclusion didn't matter. But when I finally made the call, I felt as if I was stepping onto a tightrope. "Jess, I need to be honest," I told her, my voice trembling slightly. "I don't think I can help you with this." The silence that followed felt monumental, like I had just detonated a small bomb in the middle of our relationship. "Why?" she asked, confusion and hurt lacing her voice. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to articulate the ache I'd felt since becoming just a guest. "You didn't make me a bridesmaid. I honestly feel sidelined, like I'm not as important to you as I thought." There was a moment of silence that stretched on eternally. I briefly wondered if I should take it back, maybe promise to help anyway, but I needed her to understand why this hurt. There was probably a good reason, maybe she thought me too busy or too far away. But instead, it felt like rejection, and I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. Jessica's reply was a mixture of shock and disappointment, and in that moment, I saw the big gap forming between us, a chasm of unspoken words. "I didn't mean." "It like that," she whispered, and I felt the pain in her voice matching my own. "I just didn't think you'd want to." Those were the words that stung. They insinuated that maybe our friendship had been one-sided, or that I had become just a footnote in her new life narrative. Our conversation spiraled into arguments, silence, then tears. We avoided each other for days, walls closing in even more until they felt like a suffocating box. I had to confront my own insecurities. Was I being petty? A part of me wanted to reach out again, to apologize, but I wasn't sure I could stand being in a situation that made me feel so small. Eventually, while I wrestled with my thoughts, I received a text from Jessica. "I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk?" It was an olive branch, but I hesitated, caught between pride and the desperate wish to salvage our friendship. As I prepared for the conversation, I realized this wasn't just about a wedding or the title of bridesmaid. It was about clarity, about understanding our bond and figuring out where we stood now. In my heart, I wanted to believe that even if our friendship looked different, it wouldn't have to vanish. Time would tell where that conversation would lead us, but for now, I felt strangely hopeful that perhaps our friendship could bend without breaking. Life isn't always about titles and roles, sometimes, it's about navigating the gray areas together. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over everything as I watched the shadows stretch across the yard. Wedding preparation was in full swing at Emily's house, her younger sister and some of their closest friends buzzing around like bees. I took a moment to breathe, the sweet scent of blooming flowers blending with the anxiety swirling in my stomach. I'd spent nights imagining what this talk would entail, rehearsing potential angles and arguments in my head, but none of that seemed to matter the moment I stepped into the realm of reality. My best friend, the one I'd laughed with through countless late-night chats, the one I turned to during heartbreaks and victories alike, was standing before me, ideally the happiest bride-to-be. Yet there was a strange awkwardness between us. It felt like a vast canyon separating two cliffs, the old emotions reeling and clashing with the unresolved tension of our situation. "Hey, can we talk for a minute?" I ventured, my voice caught somewhere between a plea and a whisper of uncertainty. Emily turned, her expression shifting from exuberant joy to cautious curiosity. There was a flicker of concern in her brown eyes, but, thankfully, no defensiveness. I watched as she nodded, leading me into a quieter corner of the yard where the sounds of chatter faded to muffled echoes. "Is everything okay?" she asked, a hint of worry creeping into her tone. I hesitated for a moment, searching for the right way to phrase my thoughts. "I just wanted to tell you that I've been feeling really left out since you announced the wedding. I know I wasn't chosen as a bridesmaid, and it stings, honestly." The words spilled from me, raw and unedited. Emily's face fell slightly, as if the wind had been knocked from her sails. "I didn't mean to exclude you. It's not that. I had to make some tough choices, and there was so much pressure from family," she replied, tears pooling slightly in her eyes. I hated seeing her upset, yet the frustration bubbled within me. How was it that the planning of her day, a day supposed to bring joy, was also tearing at the fabric of our friendship? We'd always celebrated each other's successes, supporting one another through thick and thin. "Emily, it feels like our friendship doesn't hold the same weight anymore. It's like I started retreating into my feelings, knowing I was on the outskirts of such an important moment for you," I confessed, my voice trembling slightly. I tried to explain that it wasn't just the bridesmaid title, it was about being an integral part of her life. It was about feeling seen, feeling valued. "I want to be there for you, but I also need to know where I fit in, you know?" Emily's expression turned contemplative, a mixture of regret and understanding washing over her. "I really didn't think it would feel like that to you. You mean so much to me, and I understand why you'd be hurt," she said, her voice softening. "I'm sorry. I want you there, despite the traditional roles and things." We stood in silence for a moment, both reflecting upon the rift and the bridge that was slowly being built. My heart warmed with the possibility that there was more to our relationship than just the traditional norms society imposed on these moments. As we spoke more, apologies were exchanged, emotions fluctuated, tears, laughter, and finally a mutual understanding emerged. We decided I'd help with the wedding, not as a bridesmaid but as a devoted friend with a unique role, pivotal to the day yet without any labels that might diminish how I felt. It was then, in that honest exchange, that I realized friendships may shift and change, but that doesn't mean they have to wither away. There was a newfound desire to reshape our dynamic, and it flickered back to life. Months later, on the day of the wedding itself, as I stood near the entrance watching Emily float down the aisle in her magnificent gown, the butterflies inside my stomach danced not from jealousy, but from pride and a sense of elation. I smiled, not because I was there as a part of the bridal party but because I was celebrating my best friend, the one who had chosen to navigate the complexities of life with me instead of leaving me behind. Sure, the wedding didn't bring the same picturesque fantasy I might have fantasized about, but it illustrated how the love we shared had a way of bending, growing, and adapting through life's unexpected turns. I walked over to her after the ceremony, wrapping my arms around her as she glowed in happiness. Despite our hiccup, we were moving forward. Our bond forged stronger against the backdrop of a wedding, not diminished by any single title. As I pulled away from our embrace, I noticed her eyes glistening, not just from the emotional whirlpool of the day but also with gratitude. "You were amazing today," she said, and I couldn't help but smile. It felt like a true acknowledgement, the first step toward healing whatever cracks had formed between us. That moment, wrapped in the warmth of her joy, grounded me, reminding me of all the laughter we'd shared over late-night movies and heartbreaks. We were built on memories, not titles, memories that had survived everything from petty arguments about whose turn it was to pick the restaurant to late-night heart-to-hearts about our wildest dreams. Maybe the role of bridesmaid had taken a backseat, but our friendship deserved recognition of its own, resilient and brimming with history. We stepped into the reception area, the whispers of congratulations. "And you look gorgeous," swirling around us like champagne bubbles. The music pulsed, a contagious beat that made it impossible not to sway a little, despite the awkwardness still nipping at the edges of my mind. I watched as she spun in her dress, her laughter cutting through the noise, and suddenly, I knew I wanted to dive in, to let go of the tension. I grabbed her hand, dragging her toward the dance floor, and we flailed around like two awkward marionettes, laughing as I spun her around, letting the day wash over me. As the night wore on, I took a moment to step outside onto the patio. The stars were twinkling like tiny beacons, and the sounds from inside softened. I pulled my phone out, contemplating the messages flying back and forth with my other friends, all debating whether or not I was right to feel hurt about not being a bridesmaid. Was I supposed to forgive and forget just because I realized that deep down, I craved her happiness more than the recognition? I didn't want to become a subject of petty gossip, but I also didn't want to silence my feelings. I pondered whether I was being irrational. Was I the asshole? I swirled the drink in my hand, suddenly exhausted by the complexity of it all. Then I heard the door creak open behind me. It was her, stepping out into the night, her voice soft and sincere. "Can I join you?" she asked, a hint of vulnerability coloring her tone. I nodded, and we stood side by side, both staring into the dark sky. "Sorry for earlier. I know I messed up not making you a bridesmaid," she started, her words tumbling out like a waterfall of emotions. I felt a knot tighten in my throat. "I thought it would be easier, but I see now how it might have hurt you." I turned to face her, wanting to speak but lost in the depth of her gaze. "It's okay. I value our friendship so much," I finally managed. "It means everything to me. I guess I just felt a little abandoned." There was a pause, a shared silence thick with understanding. "I didn't choose you to be my bridesmaid, but I did choose you to be in my life," she said slowly, her voice carrying weight. "You're still my best friend, and I'm sorry that title hurt you. You deserve to feel celebrated too." She took my hand in hers, warm and reassuring, and for that brief moment, the cosmic tension began to dissolve. This wasn't just about the wedding, it was about articulation, about redefining what mattered most to us. As we resumed our posts on the patio, reflecting on the evening, I realized this was less about the traditional roles we thought we were supposed to fit into and more about the enduring bond we were crafting, one layered with acceptance and understanding. So, as we walked back inside hand in hand, faces beaming with a quiet joy only we could decipher, the night felt alive, vibrant. Not just from the glittering fairy lights or the cheers erupting from friends but from the rekindled spark of our friendship. We had navigated the gray areas, and life, with all its messiness, was still beautiful. And maybe that's the real celebration. I never thought my birthday would cause such a stir at work, but here we are. It all started when I was chatting with one of my clients, Louise, during a routine meeting about her project. She's a lovely woman, full of energy, and somehow, amid our usual discussions about budgets and timelines, my birthday came up. I casually mentioned that it was just a week away. I thought nothing of it until I overheard Louise bringing it up to my coworkers later on. That's when I got this sinking feeling in my stomach. It was one thing to share a piece of personal information with a client, it was another to hear her reprimanding my team for not remembering my birthday. "How could you forget? It's the least you could do," she'd exclaimed, her tone laced with disbelief. I could feel my cheeks burning as I listened from the other side of the office, trying to fade into the wall as I felt the weight of each word. I mean, I like my birthday, but I also know it's not a holiday that everyone should mark on their calendars. I'm not one to seek attention or make a fuss over it, but the embarrassment was magnified when I noticed my coworkers awkwardly shifting in their seats, clearly uncomfortable. It began to snowball into something much bigger, and I couldn't shake the thought that I had triggered this because I had been too open. I considered messaging Louise to downplay her reaction, but then I worried it might just make her think I agreed with her. Either way, I knew I had inadvertently set my coworkers up for an uncomfortable situation, and now I was stuck wishing I had just kept my mouth shut. The office turned into this strange battlefield of awkward smiles and half-hearted birthday wishes, and despite my attempts to mask my feelings, I couldn't help but feel a bit resentful about the whole ordeal. Was I the asshole for sharing my birthday in the first place? Should I have anticipated that it might end up being a spectacle? As I left work that evening, I kept replaying the day in my head, questioning my choice to disclose something so simple yet loaded with social ramifications. I could hear snippets of conversations echoing in my mind, Louise's words haunting me, "You deserve better." Did I? Was it really a big deal for others to forget? I had planned to shrug it off, but now I felt like I'd sparked a drama that could have stayed dormant. Reflecting back now, I realize it was possibly just a lesson in setting boundaries. Maybe I do hold some responsibility for oversharing, but I couldn't shake the notion that others should also respect the space of personal milestones. Fast forward a few days, my coworkers did make an effort to celebrate, albeit small and awkwardly, as they surprised me with a cake during lunch. There were smiles, laughter, and an unspoken truce in the air. But even then, as I blew out the candles, I had the nagging thought of how easily a simple birthday mention could ignite such confusion and pressure. It made me wonder about how often we unintentionally make simple things complicated for ourselves and others, all while trying to connect. So, was I the asshole? Maybe a bit, but we're all learning how to navigate this tangled web of human interactions together, and perhaps that's the real gift we can give each other. The day after my birthday celebration, I came in to find the atmosphere at the office tinged with tension, like the unsettling silence before a storm. My heart sank a bit. I worried that whatever truce we had formed during the cake outing was fragile, and I hadn't fully realized how profound a small detail, my birthday, could disrupt our workplace harmony. The client, a woman named Sandra, had been with our firm for a couple of years, and though her expectations were often daunting, she had become someone I regarded with a mix of respect and caution. By late morning, just as I was settling into yet another round of emails, she called me into her corner office. With her polished, efficient demeanor, she casually mentioned how my coworkers had eviled my birthday, but then proceeded to express her utter disapproval of their forgetfulness. It's honestly shocking how they didn't even acknowledge it. Everyone should celebrate those little moments, she said, shaking her head, her tone pointed and almost accusatory. Honestly, I had never thought much about how to gauge others' reactions to my birthday. I disclosed this fact in what I thought was a light-hearted manner, just casual chit-chat, but instead, it felt like I dropped a bomb on her perceptions of my coworkers. The weight of her disappointment settled heavily on my chest, and I stumbled over my words, trying to defend a bunch of well-meaning people who were, admittedly, not always attentive but were far from malicious. As I left her office, an uncomfortable swirl of emotions bubbled inside me. I wondered where negligence ended and ignorance began. Did I have a right to be upset that they hadn't celebrated? Sure, but spending my birthday celebrating with cake brought me joy, not resentment. Still, her words echoed in my mind throughout the day, creating an uneasy tension that gnawed at the back of my brain. As the week progressed, I noticed Sandra growing more agitated with my team. Small complaints escalated into dramatic statements. "I expect better," she said during one of our weekly project meetings, rubbing her temple as if the world's woes lay on her shoulders. My coworkers exchanged glances, their unease felt like a strained rope, nearly ready to snap. I found myself in a precarious position, loving my team while also recognizing Sandra's discomfort, which had blossomed into an incongruous empathy. But did I have a stake in this? Should I have kept my mouth shut about my birthday? It was as if I had unintentionally thrust myself into the role of mediator, which only amplified the urgency of the whole situation. I realized that this spiral could only worsen if my team wanted a solid working relationship with someone as pivotal as Sandra. So, out of sheer desperation, I decided it was time to bring everyone together for an honest chat. I couldn't let this disruption continue swirling without some clarity. I called a meeting, not in the conference room, but in the cozy local cafe down the street, an escape from the intense corporate atmosphere. As I spoke, voicing my feelings about the situation, there was an unexpected silence. I could see the light of recognition flicker in my coworkers' eyes. I was no longer just airing a grievance but revealing my vulnerability. They shared how they sometimes felt lost in the busyness and, admittedly, how they had forgotten dates of significance in their own lives too. It was a moment of liberation, like we were all unwrapping a big fabric blanket that had been suffocating us. Together, we acknowledged that while we didn't celebrate my birthday as we could have, it didn't define how we valued each other. The conversation deepened, evolving into an understanding that we were all learning to respect one another's feelings and acknowledge celebrations big and small. Afterward, I had a real talk with Sandra. It wasn't easy, but I decided to be upfront. I explained that while I appreciated her taking an interest in my birthday, I also saw how this had inadvertently strained relationships within my team. To my surprise, she listened. The hardened front softened just a bit. She admitted it had struck a nerve, realizing she often placed high expectations not just onto others, but on herself as well. It was a reckoning for both of us, one that we navigated into understanding rather than confrontation. And so, while my birthday had sparked something unsettling, it also unearthed an opportunity for connection. As the days turned into weeks, something shifted. There was less tension, more laughter in the office, and even hints of planned celebrations for upcoming occasions. I learned that sometimes being the catalyst for tough conversations wasn't so much about assuming a role of blame or validation but about opening a door for understanding. I felt less like I was wading through unsteady emotional waters and more like I was standing on solid ground. Reflecting on it now, maybe there was never a concrete answer to whether I was the asshole. Maybe what mattered was the fact that we all had to communicate, flawed as we might be, and through that, we grew. I think we're all figuring it out, and who knows? Perhaps the next birthday will be more about the celebration of connection than a single forgotten date. As the weeks rolled on after that birthday, I felt a subtle shift not just within myself, but in the dynamics of the office. It was as if we had collectively let out a breath we didn't even know we were holding. Conversations became easier, lighter, and I could see my coworkers making a real effort to connect beyond just the sterile exchange of emails and deadlines. We had been teetering on the edge of a delicate balance, and somehow, that cake had nudged us back into a healthier rhythm. Here's the thing, I'd always been the quiet one, dragging my feet into the background while my louder colleagues basked in the spotlight. But in this newfound openness, I found myself stepping forward more, sharing ideas during our meetings, even leading a brainstorming session one chilly Thursday morning. The sense of camaraderie grew, and for once, I didn't dread Monday mornings. It was like we were tuning up a symphony, each of us finding our notes and harmonizing together, a far cry from where we had been just the month before. Then came Tasha's email. She was one of the most ambitious project managers I'd ever met, a real firecracker. Her bright personality could light up even the dullest meeting, and maybe because I respected her so much, it stung more when I saw the subject line, "Can I ask a favor?" I braced myself as I clicked it open. She needed help preparing for a presentation, a significant pitch to our higher-ups. The kind of deal that could elevate our entire team. Despite my earlier hesitation, I felt a spark of energy flow through me with the prospect of collaborating with her. There was a boldness in saying yes that I hadn't recognized before. We spent hours piecing together our ideas, and as we worked, I shared a little more of myself, my thoughts, my fears about failing, the weight of those uncelebrated years. "This is good stuff, you know?" Tasha said, her eyes lighting up as she read through the bullet points I had drafted. "You should be more vocal about this stuff, honestly. Don't wait for the others to notice you." I remember chuckling, feeling a warmth spread across my face. After our session, she scooted her chair closer, as if she was initiating a secret mission. "Since you're, actually celebrating birthdays now, what are your thoughts about throwing a little office party next month?" Her words lingered long after I left the conference room. Doubts flitted through my mind. What if it was received poorly? What if everyone forgot again? But I silenced those whispers. I wanted to embrace this new sense of connection, to lean into the unpretentious chaos of birthdays and celebrate the chaotic beauty of our imperfect human existence. So I sent out a quirky, light-hearted invitation to the team, asking them to participate in what I cheekily called my half-birthday bash because, sure, why not make it more absurd? I even set up a small wishing wall with sticky notes where everyone could leave behind little notes of encouragement or inside jokes. When the day arrived, there was laughter and genuine excitement. We all wore colorful party hats, and for a moment, none of us were focused on deadlines or corporate structures. We were just a bunch of folks sharing laughter and memories. As we all gathered around the table, I realized I wasn't solely championing the significance of birthdays for my own sake anymore. I was celebrating our efforts to connect in ways that transcended just remembering a date. The simple act of showing up for one another, of taking interest, of daring to be vulnerable amidst laughter and goofy decorations, it meant something far more poignant than I could have articulated a few months ago. I watched as my colleagues swapped stories and shared awkward moments, each little tidbit weaving us closer together. And as I blew out candles again, half a year's worth of dreams and aspirations, I knew that we had moved beyond being just coworkers, we were becoming something more like a family. So, was I the asshole for mentioning my birthday? Maybe, maybe not. In the end, I realized it was never just about that single cake or who remembered what date. It was about giving ourselves permission to be seen, to be celebrated, and to navigate the complexities of our relationships. Maybe, just maybe, the real lesson I learned wasn't about birthdays at all, it was about the richness of presence, of kindness, and allowing each other to grow, one imperfect step at a time. I sat on our faded couch, the kind that had seen better days, staring blankly at the coffee table littered with wedding invitations. My husband, Kyle, had just received one from his sister, and the moment he read the name of the venue, the same place where we'd had our own wedding, the nostalgia washed over me like a tidal wave. But it quickly faded, replaced by an unsettling rush of anxiety. You see, Kyle hadn't spoken to his sister in 2 years. It wasn't one of those petty squabbles that could be brushed aside, it was a feud that began when she belittled our decision to have a child early in our marriage, telling us we were ruining our lives. The words had cut deep, especially because I had struggled with infertility and felt vulnerable in ways I couldn't vocalize. Now, here we were, standing on the precipice of a decision that made my stomach churn. As I watched him thumb through the invitation, I felt this surge of protectiveness rising within me. I knew that if he went, there was a good chance it would escalate into something ugly, and I didn't want to see him hurt again. I hesitated, then finally voiced my concern, choosing my words carefully. "Are you really planning on going?" I asked, trying to gauge his intentions. His expression shifted from excitement to uncertainty, and for a split second, I saw the flicker of ambivalence play across his face, a battle between the desire to reconcile and the fear of rejection that had haunted him for years. I took a breath and laid out my feelings, layering them with severity. He needed to understand that inviting old wounds to a celebration might not be as festive as it seemed. His eyes narrowed, a shadow of disappointment shadowed his features. "So, you want me to just stay home? Don't you want me to try?" The tension thickened in the air, I felt it tightening around us like a noose. I took a moment, biting my lip, knowing I had to be careful. "It's not just about you, Kyle. It's about protecting what we've built together. You can't just walk back into her life as if nothing happened, and I don't want to be there when it all falls apart." The room filled with a heavy silence, punctuated only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. I could read his frustration in the way his fingers tapped nervously against the armrest, and it killed me. I never wanted to feel like the villain in this story. I worried that by suggesting he shouldn't go, I was shoving him into a corner, making him choose between family and our life together. It was a painful realization, but the possibility of joy turning into chaos loomed larger than any hope of reconciliation. After a long pause, Kyle finally stood up, the invitation still clutched in his hand, and I watched him walk over to the window, staring out at the street below as if trying to find answers in the mundane world outside. I felt a pang of guilt. Was I really the one keeping him from healing? Or was I merely preserving the peace we had fought so hard to achieve? The truth is, there was no clear answer. In the end, he decided not to go, a choice I silently hoped had been for the best, even if it meant reducing his relationship with his sister to a flickering flame instead of a raging fire. This decision hung over us for weeks, and while it seemed right at the time, it brought a fresh wave of uncertainty. Had I done the right thing? I wished for the distance between him and his sister to dissolve, if only they could talk openly, if only she could see him for who he was now. A few days later, we received a phone call from her. Kyle answered with a mix of hope and trepidation, and I could hear her voice on the other end, barely above a whisper. I held my breath, wishing I could take the weight of this moment away from him. It turned into a long conversation, one I eavesdropped on while pretending to be busy in the kitchen. He was answering her questions cautiously, articulating the hurt without putting blame. When he finally hung up, his eyes were a mixture of relief and residual hurt. "We're going to try again," he said, and I smiled, not because the resolution was solid but because there was a glimmer of hope we hadn't foreseen. With every turn, Every moment spent grappling with complex emotions, I realized love isn't just about the easy choices but also about the difficult conversations. A few weeks later, he joined me at the table while I was sorting the wedding invites again. "I think we should go to the wedding," he said softly, and panic flared in my chest. I didn't respond right away. Was I really okay with this? The truth is, I had no idea what the right answer was, but I knew it was a path we'd have to navigate together, no matter how thorny it might be. For what felt like an eternity, I stared at the wedding invites scattered across the table like a map to uncharted territory. Each envelope seemed to pulse with unvoiced questions and unacknowledged tensions, echoing the scramble of my thoughts. "Go to the wedding?" I murmured, trying to keep my voice steady despite the whirl of emotions churning inside me. In my mind, I could hear the punctuated laughter of my sister-in-law, Jessica, as I remembered last Thanksgiving, when the family had gathered together, and the warmth of those moments contrasted sharply with the chill that seemed to hang over everything since her engagement. She had never liked me, and I certainly hadn't warmed up to her. My husband, Daniel, had always been the centerpiece of that family, towering tall and sunny, expertly navigating the waves of familial drama with grace. And now, here we were. "You know they'll probably all side with her," I said, the weight of my concern sinking into the space between us. "They'll think I'm just being difficult, as usual. What if we don't go and it pushes you further away from them?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to identify with his frustration. "Maybe it's time to confront all that. You're not difficult for wanting to protect your peace." "Protect my peace? I'm not some damsel in distress." The echoes of fighting for my own self-worth danced in my mind, and I hesitated, staring down at the invites again. This wasn't just about a single day, it was about the larger conversation of who we were becoming, together and apart. I felt the moment catch in my throat, the vulnerability hammering at my walls. What happens when you love someone but also know their family, and their history, could drown you in a sea of tides you couldn't escape? "I just want us to be okay," I finally whispered, my heart heavy with doubt. Daniel's expression softened, and in those quiet seconds, I could see the boy who first kissed me under the stars, that same ember of hope flickering in his eyes. "We will be. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The words wrapped around me, a fragile lifeline, and for an instant, I believed in them. But then, silence slipped in, thick and unyielding, filling the cracks of our conversation. The day of the wedding dawned with a mix of excitement and dread. Clouds hung low in the sky, mirroring my uncertainty. As we dressed, I caught myself catching fleeting glimpses of Daniel, adorned in a suit that brought out the shine in his eyes. It was familiar yet filled with an edge of anxiety. I wondered, was he wearing it for them or for us? When we finally arrived at the venue, the air grew heavy with the scent of blooming flowers and inevitable conflict. Jessica was radiant, a knockout in ivory, and even through my resentment, I could feel the magnetic energy she exuded. As I stepped inside, the room seemed to spin. I could see the waves of family swirling around Daniel, pulling him into the currents of chatter. Each hug felt like a mugging, the warmth that enveloped him stealing pieces of the man I loved. "You made it," one of her relatives exclaimed, and I could tell the words were coated with a hint of surprise. The judgment was palpable, I could feel it prickling against my skin. I held my breath, fighting the urge to turn and flee. I lingered at the edges, watching Daniel greet family members with his disarming charm, but I felt like a ghost haunting the edges of his life. It was only a tentative hey from Jessica when she caught sight of me that anchored me back into reality. "Glad you came," she said, her smile tight and rehearsed, a contrast to the joyous atmosphere surrounding her. I nodded, feeling every moment stinging. Just when I was about to retreat to the bar, Daniel's laughter cut through the noise, a warm ember in the chilly distance. I stepped forward instinctively, drowning my insecurities in that familiar sound. The evening unfolded like a slow, painful dance, each conversation felt like a tightrope walk, balanced between civility and rising tension. I could see Daniel start to look wearier as the hours ticked by, and I wondered if he, too, felt the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Eventually, he found me by the appetizer table, his eyes searching mine for solace. "Let's step outside," he suggested, and his voice was firm, like a life buoy in a storm. We walked into the cool evening, the world outside humming softly, and I felt my shoulders drop just a bit. "I don't want to keep feeling like this," he confessed, hands tucked into his pockets, staring at the ground. "Being here, it's exhausting." My heart quickened. "So, what do we do about that?" I asked, feeling both terrified and relieved at the possibility of us figuring this out together. Our eyes locked, and for a moment, the chaos of the wedding faded into the background. "I guess we just need to make sure we don't lose what we've built," he said, his tone rich with resolve. The wedding buzzed behind us, merging into a muffled noise as I grasped the gravity of his words. We were two ships navigating our way through a stormy sea of familial expectations, and I couldn't help but feel hope blooming between us like wildflowers through a crack in the pavement. As the night unfolded, we exchanged glances and quiet smiles, little reminders that we had each other's backs. I still wasn't sure what the future held for us or how our relationship with Jessica would settle, but I knew that we'd face it side by side. I felt that old familiar warmth during the highs and gathered strength through the lows, knowing I could lean on him. Whatever we faced next, it was no longer just about a wedding, it was about us, and we were determined to weather the storm together. The weeks leading up to the wedding felt like a slow unraveling of both my anxiety and a tightening embrace of hope. Andy and I spent countless evenings discussing how to approach Jessica and her family, who traditionally wreathed their gatherings in an air of perfection. I often found myself lost in thought, worrying about every possible scenario. Would they even accept our presence after everything? Would he apologize and then be surprised by my hesitance? Nearly every night, I'd stare at the stars outside our window, trying to find answers in their distant flickers. Despite all the chaos, we managed to carve out moments of sheer joy amid the uncertainty. One Saturday, we decided to go on an impromptu hike, a little trail leading to a view we'd stumbled upon during one of our earlier adventures. There, on that sun-drenched mountaintop, it felt like our worries didn't matter quite as much. We laughed as we recounted the time we got lost for hours during a camping trip. He grinned, the way he always did when he was being playful, and nudged me, reminding me he would always choose me over getting lost, even if it meant wandering off the path sometimes. "Together, right?" he asked, a spark of purpose filling his gaze. "Always," I assured him, even as my heart fluttered with the weight of the journey ahead. When the wedding weekend finally arrived, anxiety slithered back into my mind, weaving itself around my thoughts like a vine. I spent the morning getting ready, choosing a dress that felt right, not too elaborate, just enough to reflect my genuine self. In the mirror, I didn't quite recognize the woman looking back at me. She seemed so resolute yet fragile, a juxtaposition that mirrored the entire situation at hand. I felt the gravel of apprehension in my throat as we made our way to the venue, Andy's hand warm in mine, grounding me amidst my swirling thoughts. As we stepped into the extravagant hall filled with laughter and happiness, I could feel the tension coiling tight within me. Andy and I exchanged small talk about the decorations, the floral arrangements bursting with color that made everything feel vibrant, yet every cheerful sound felt like it was humming with an undercurrent of dread. We shared a few awkward smiles with family members who seemed blissfully unaware of the backstory. And there was Jessica, radiant and graceful, a fairy tale figure enveloped in a gown. My heart softened for a split second, until reality nudged me back awake. It was still a wedding marred by complexities. Before long, Jessica caught sight of us. Her expression shifted, and for just a heartbeat, I saw the flicker of worry dance across her features. But she turned her head away quickly, adjusting her attention to a friend beside her. My heart sank for both of us. She had a lot on her mind, and I knew our past might become an unwanted guest at this celebration. I glanced at Andy, who was watching me closely, and I decided to breathe through the moment. "We'll be okay, right?" I whispered, even though I was unsure myself. He nodded, determination lighting up his eyes, as if to say that we were in this together despite the storm brewing around us. As the night unfolded, we shared glances, laughter, and moments that made me realize how deeply we were connected. Our table found itself surrounded by family that was surprisingly warm and welcoming. A cousin of ours asked about how we'd been, easing me back into comfortable conversation. I felt a smile tugging at my lips as I recalled our recent adventures, the way Andy rolled his eyes good-naturedly when I dragged him to yet another gallery exhibit. Yet somewhere in the back of my mind, Jessica lingered like the ghost of unspoken words. Then it happened. Midway through dinner, Andy excused himself to head to the restroom. I hadn't meant to, but my eyes sought out Jessica across the room, and to my surprise, she was looking at me. Caught in that moment, I felt something shift, something different from before. No anger, just a curiously soft vulnerability. Perhaps we could bridge this gap. With hesitant steps, I made my way through the crowd, threading between joyful laughter and sweet reminiscences. "Jessica," I said softly when I finally stood in front of her, "can we talk?" Her smile faltered for an instant, but she nodded, the two of us moving away from the merriment. I could sense the weight of this moment, how years of tension coiled around us, waiting for an opening. "I didn't expect you guys to come," she said, the warmth in her tone stripped back, revealing an edge of something I couldn't quite identify. Did she feel trapped by our past? "Yeah, well, neither did we," I admitted, a nervous laugh slipping out. "But here we are. Together." The honesty in my voice felt like a lifeline thrown across treacherous waters. It's not that I don't care about you both. It's complicated," she murmured, her eyes locking onto mine, vulnerability spilling out in waves. We stood there for a moment surrounded by distant laughter, two estranged sisters-in-law searching for a thread of connection amidst a tapestry of family history. In those seconds, I realized that this was the start, not just for her, but for us. It wasn't about solving everything in a single conversation. It was about acknowledging our shared past, our painful scars, and learning to move forward, slowly but surely. No matter how clumsy it felt, we could try. "Complicated is okay," I said, almost surprised by my own words. "What's important is what we choose to do next." For a moment, it was just silence between us, more welcoming than an embrace. And as she nodded, I felt a cautious yet promising warmth begin to bloom in that space, like the first signs of spring pushing their way through a winter-frosted earth. Whatever happened next would be fraught with challenges, but Andy and I had already navigated this intricate path. All we needed was faith in the footsteps ahead of us. And in that warm ambience enveloped by festivity, I believed we might just find our way towards healing together. It was a standard Friday night at our house, and the air was thick with the smell of freshly baked brownies and popcorn that I had just finished tossing in the air fryer. As the matriarch of my family and an ever-dedicated team mom for my daughter's softball squad, I thought I was hitting all the right notes. We had a sleepover planned for the girls after practice, a popular tradition that usually saw kids raiding our pantry for snacks until someone inevitably flops into a sugar coma. I had decided to swing for the fences this time, metaphorically speaking, with a spread that I thought would resonate. Chips, soda, candy, you name it, everything I deemed fun and sleepover worthy. But as the girls poured in, all giggles and energy, my heart sank a little when I caught sight of one of the other moms standing by the snack table with a look of horror etched across her face. "Oh wow, I didn't think we were having a junk food party," she quipped with a tight smile, and it felt like the air had stopped circulating for a moment. You see, this particular mom, Lisa, prided herself on health. She lectured everyone during meetings about nutrition and how vital it was for our children, especially athletes, to have the right fuel. My mind started racing. Was I actually doing something wrong? The girls, oblivious to the tension brewing, dug into the snacks with glee, but I felt undeniably uneasy. I recalled when I was a kid, and sleepovers were a chaotic mix of soda and treats, with laughter drowned out only by the sound of a completely exhausted mom trying to keep the volume down. So why did it feel different now, like I was some villain for wanting my daughter to just enjoy the simplicity of junk food at a sleepover? As Lisa continued to sip on her herbal tea and lecture the other moms who didn't seem too worried, my anxiety turned into a defensive flare-up, and I could feel myself brimming with irritation. I finally blurted out something like, "It's just one night, and they deserve to have fun." But instantly regretted it when Lisa gave me that classic "I'm disappointed" look. The girls continued munching away, but I, unfortunately, was caught in a spiral of doubt, wondering if maybe I had put the ultimate parental foot wrong by not adhering to a strict playbook of health guidelines that I never signed up for. The tension in the air grew, and as the night wore on, I kept picturing the conversations that were taking place behind my back. Would they question if I was a good mom for allowing this? Did they think I didn't care about their health? As the girls shouted for comedies in the living room, my heart softened thinking about the laughter I had intended to cultivate with my choices. Moments passed, and they were bouncing off walls, connecting in joy. It ignited a flicker of comfort in my chest, until out of the blue, one of the girls, Emma, threw up after a particularly spirited burst of sugary energy. Chaos erupted. Lisa whipped around dramatically as if I were solely responsible for this culinary catastrophe, which only fueled the anxiety swirling within me. As I cleaned up the mess with 1,000 apologies spilling from my lips, I caught a glimpse of the other mother's stifling laughter, and I realized that my fears of being judged might have been blown way out of proportion. I discovered that Lisa's health obsession didn't resonate with a lot of the other moms who craved a little levity amidst the grind of competitive youth sports. By the end of the night, even Lisa was helping me, albeit reluctantly, while still casting judgmental glances, and I found solace in my daughters hugging me tightly. "That was fun, Mom," she said, and in that moment, I realized something vital. Parenting doesn't come with a defined manual, and sometimes you just need to let kids be kids, even if it means extra junk on a special night. I went to bed that night reflecting on how our choices shape our children's memories, and I fell asleep wondering if Lisa's comments would still sting in the morning. In the weeks that followed, I did have conversations with other parents that highlighted varying opinions about nutrition and fun, and while a few still sided with Lisa, many came to my defense, sharing that they, too, remembered the sheer joy of junk food and chaos from their own childhoods. I found a cool balance moving forward, incorporating a mix of healthier snacks into the mix while preserving those nostalgic treats, and reminded myself that while we all want the best for our kids, fun and freedom have their own essential place in growing up. Maybe in the grand scheme of things, there's more than one way to be a good mom, one that includes a little more love and a little less judgment. Reflecting on that night, I felt an array of emotions swirling inside me, a blend of relief and residual tension that lingered long after the sleepover chaos had faded. The laughter and the smell of popcorn had long been replaced by the soft hush of the night, but the lingering whispers of doubt still echoed in my mind. Sure, I'd found a way to balance the snacks, but a part of me wondered if I had truly won any battle. Why was I so shaken by Lisa's opinion? I prided myself on being a laid-back mom, one who encouraged fun and creativity, yet here I was, caught up in a whirlwind of guilt over a plate piled high with nachos and gummy bears. Later that week, as I drove the girls to practice, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. My daughter Amelia, perched in the back seat with her friends, was laughing uncontrollably over some inside joke, her face lit up like a Christmas tree. That simple joy made my heart swell. In that moment, I realized I was the architect of those giggly memories. I had chosen to let them have that vibrant night, embracing the wild spirit of childhood. Yet, I couldn't help but glance up at the school in front of me, wondering if tomorrow it would be a soft reminder of Lisa's judgment or a celebration of my commitment to being a good mother. One evening, while sorting through Amelia's backpack, I stumbled upon a handwritten note. It was a small, folded piece of paper, and my curiosity pricked at me. I opened it, and there in her familiar scrawl was a thank you note that made my heart ache with sweetness. Thank you for the best sleepover ever, Mom. You let me have fun and brought smiles to my friends' faces. In that moment, everything came rushing back, the messy fun, the laughter, the absurdity of our midnight snack creations. My heart tightened, a wave of gratitude washed over me, reminding me how becoming a mother had transformed my perspective. As the weeks rolled on, something remarkable happened. I began embracing the idea that nurturing wasn't always about strictness, that it could coexist with silliness, an epiphany that settled comfortably in my mind. The days became a warm embrace of mixed snacks, Saturday movie marathons, and occasional baking soirees where the only rule was if it doesn't look good, it still tastes amazing. It's funny how a sleepover, and all the drama that came with it, could circle back into something nourishing, filling the gaps with laughter rather than tracking rules. With time, I learned to tune out Lisa's opinions and forge my own version of motherhood, one where every smile my daughter wore was worth its weight in sugar. I'd texted Lisa a few times since then, bridging our conversation with casual updates about practice and games, and while she remained polite, the tension between us lingered like an awkward dance. Sometimes, though, I still questioned if I was being too lenient or allowing too much chaos, yet I realized a little chaotic fun, even in the form of junk food, was a gift I was proud to give. On a Sunday afternoon, I brought out the rainbow sprinkles and ice cream, throwing an impromptu ice cream social for Amelia and her friends. They squealed with delight as the ice cream dripped and the sprinkles cascaded over piled high cones. Each burst of laughter felt like a gentle reminder, every day doesn't need to fit into a mold, every meal doesn't need to be perfect. Instead, I learned to celebrate this wild, messy, beautiful phase called childhood, where chaos had its rightful place alongside lessons of moderation. So, was I really the asshole for that sleepover? Maybe a little for being too concerned about the opinions of others, but not for letting my daughter revel in a night of joy. In the grand picture of life, it turned out that love, laughter, and a little sprinkle of chaos were all essential ingredients in crafting lasting memories. As I watched Amelia laugh and play with her friends, effortlessly lost in their bubble of happiness, I knew I was okay with all the contradictions and complexities of parenthood. At the end of the day, I was simply doing my best, and that felt perfect enough. As I settled into the comfortable chaos of our living room, a wave of relief washed over me. The night had transformed from a battlefield of expectations into a tapestry woven with laughter, illuminated by the sporadic bursts of giggles that echoed against the walls, clashing against my doubts like fireworks in the night sky. I sat back on the couch, an oversized bowl of popcorn nestled on my lap, my heart swelling as I observed Amelia and her friends sprawled out across the floor, their individual quirks forming a beautiful mosaic of childhood. I baked those brownies with chunks of chocolate that probably had more sugar than cocoa. They'd turned out to be a hit, their sweet scent melding with the salty popcorn and cheesy nachos that we all started burying ourselves in. Yet, there was still that niggling thought, that seed of insecurity stemming from my conversation with Lisa. Did I really go too far in choosing the menu for the sleepover? Were my intentions, initially pure and joyful, overshadowed by my worry of not fitting the mold of what a responsible mom should be? I wanted to be an influential figure in their lives, an anchor they could return to, but here I was, casting aside the boundary of moderation in this one small area. As much as I prayed my daughter wouldn't be consumed by the judgments of others, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd somehow let her down by embracing the fun side of food instead of becoming the health-conscious mom. But then I looked again. The sight before me, a pile of pillows and blankets, laughter spilling into every corner, was a reminder of the freedom I'd wanted for her. Each girl had a slice of pizza in one hand and a brownie in the other, cheeks smeared with splotches of melted chocolate. Their bond over those treats felt sacred, a moment stolen from the everyday obligations of being children. I recalled my own sleepovers filled with late-night snacks and whispered secrets, how those nights had cajoled the stars out of me, age-old friendships cemented over laughter and late-night debates about which boy band was the best. "Can we have a dance party next?" Amelia suggested, lighting up with that uncontainable energy only youth can possess. The girls erupted into an agreement, and they jumped to their feet like a pack of puppies. I laughed. A dance party wasn't exactly part of the itinerary. But then, what's an itinerary when you're young and alive? As the music started blaring from the speaker, I got up to join them, hesitant at first, but willing to let the rhythm sweep me into their world. I swung my arms, letting go of any remaining self-consciousness while they twirled around me, losing themselves to the beat. For a brief moment, I was that age again, slipping into the simplicity of life without the weight of judgment. The laughter morphed into a chorus of delight, and in that dance, I felt the gentle reminder that while structure is essential, spontaneity breathes life into our existence. Just then, my phone buzzed, and it was a text from Lisa. "Hey, I've been thinking about what you said and I wanted to apologize for being judgmental. You're doing great, and maybe I have some things to work on too." A warmth spread through me. Maybe my heart wasn't racing as much from my worries tonight. Maybe, just maybe, in this complex world, we were all navigating something wholly imperfect together. As I hit reply, I felt resolute. "Thank you, Lisa. We all have our style. Let's collaborate on the next sleepover." The night wore on, a gentle spiral into laughter and camaraderie. As the girls eventually flopped down onto sleeping bags, sleepy-eyed and full of sugar, I knew that in that moment, I'd created a safe space for them to breathe, to thrive. I slipped into my own refuge of reflection, accepting that I was not just a mom who fed her kids junk food but a creator of memories, a guardian of joy. Behind the cozy chaos, love had poured in, filling every corner. And in that messy, beautiful night, I learned once more that sometimes being the best parent means letting go of the whole right and wrong approach, simply allowing love, laughter, and a sprinkle of fun to lead the way.